This is The Final Word. It is Jeff Lemon and Adam Collins together with you for Season 16, Episode 31, the middle of August, the 14th of August in theory, where you are and where I am, even though we're in different time zones. But if we go on Australian time, Australian Eastern Standard Time, as it would be at the moment, as is the true calling, the central time zone of The Final Word, it is... no longer Jason Dunstall's 60th birthday. It is Adam Collins' 40th birthday. Congratulations. Welcome to the club. You're officially old. But as has been pointed out to me by people, including parents, there comes a point in your life where you look back at 40 and you think, that was extraordinarily young. So look at it from that perspective rather than the other way around. It's a relief to get there.
Yeah, it's a privilege as well. I was reading a book last week where the central character was turning 50. I mean, the one book I nearly finished when I was on holiday chasing two kids around in a resort in Menorca. You know, it wasn't that kind of holiday where you can kind of stack the books up. But the novel I was reading anyway, I didn't realize it was about that. And I think if I was to scale back and take the real meaning of the book out, it's that you've got to treat it like a privilege that getting to different ages and different milestones, yet your body won't be as strong or nimble, probably is the right word, as it was when I was younger. But, you know, a bit like I took some inspiration from the Jimmy thing last week, you know, when he's like, no, I'm fighting against the things not working as well as they used to. I'm going to fight against that as well. I've never been playing more cricket, for example. I want to stay as fit as I can. Why wouldn't you? When you're 40, it's not, you know, I'm not moving into old age. I'm moving into middle age. There is a difference there. So, yeah, but I don't know. It's a thing, isn't it? It's impossible to avoid reflecting on the fact that 40 does sound a lot different to 39 or to any of the other ages in the 30s. It's a substantial milestone. So I don't know, I guess in some respects I'm on the back nine of life. I've seen that written, that when you hit 40, you're kind of halfway through. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Statistically, you're not. But, I don't know. It's a thing.
I reckon 39 has more loading than 40, because 39 people are thinking of you as you're on the brink. You're like the end of the Italian Job when the bus is hanging halfway over the precipice, and will it tilt this way and will it tilt that way? Inevitably, it has to tip eventually. Whereas once you reach the start of a new decade, you're the youngest person in the 40s or the youngest person in the 30s. You've got this whole stretch of clear water ahead of you before you get towards the end of the decade. So I think all of my milestone ones that I've tipped over have felt more like liberation than like a sentence, because now possibility opens up.
Yeah, and look, it's been, don't want to make this too self-referential, but given we're starting here, like you think about the decade we've kind of had together, because it does mirror most of the 30s. I think we probably met when I was in my late 20s and started doing this in our very early 30s or thereabouts. And this has been a really nourishing and unexpected decade. Had you said to me 10 years ago on this day, you'll get to do the following 20 things and build, you know, and citing the work stuff and the community we've built, and the stuff we've been able to do when it comes to travel and people we have relationships around the world, I would have been well chuffed at that. So, looking in the rear vision mirror, it's been a really interesting and unexpected decade on that front. And looking forward, it isn't as much about me anymore. It's clearly about the girls. And that's the way I've got to view every decision I make in my life now. It's about me to an extent, but you've got to be selfless in the way that you view your own life, because my main responsibility is now to my children. So there's all of these things that are ticking over and percolating in my brain, and hopefully I get it right. And the next decade is as interesting as the one we're wrapping up in the next few hours, UK or has just started in Australia. I think I was born at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. I know that 5 o'clock on a Wednesday, where my mum used to say when I was a little boy that I was born
stuck in the traffic, though. Daryl must have been filthy. 5 o'clock. That's the worst possible time to be trying to drive home. Surely you could have got in before the school rush, or at least left it until 7 p.m.
That's it. I do know I was born, in time for tea, Mum used to say. I remember when my parents turned 40, which doesn't feel that long ago. I remember when Jason Dunstall and Dermot Brereton turned 40, because that was 20 years ago, and I've always had that reference point with Dermy and Dunstall turning 40, exactly 20 years to the week older than me. Just one of those quirks, being a Hawthorn supporter. So, but mostly, as I come back to where I started, it's a privilege, because not everyone gets the chance to live a life that reaches a fifth decade, and I will, and that's cool. And then we go.
And it is the final word decade, really, which is a slightly terrifying thought. But around about June next year would be 10 years from 2015 when we.
Well, another way of looking at it is, if you want to, I mean, the November 2014 is fairly important in our story, when we first commentated together on your sofa, which was the catalyst for all of the conversations, when we were saying things to each other like, fuck, why is there not a cricket podcast? And I go, no, there is one. There's the World Cricket Show. And you go, what's that? And, you know, we would have these like ridiculous chats long into the night over several beers about what we could do and how bad everything else was. And hopefully we've made it just a tiny bit better. And yeah, here we are, both getting to do this in our 40s.
That's the aim. Not an ad, but a question. You were in Spain the other week, where I was about a week before that. Getting on your NordVPN, I'm going to assume, worked well for me, I've got to say, over that period of time. Your experience? Let's
make it an ad. Why not have an early ad read? Fuck, it worked well. I love the Olympics. As you know, Jeff, I'm slightly obsessed with the Olympics. I was jealous of your conversation with Baz last week, recapping week one of the Olympics. I'm like, oh, yeah, I want to talk about this as well. But I know it's kind of beyond us now, so I won't spend too much time doing that. But, you know, I was 4. Again, this is all childhood stuff, right? But I was 4 at Seoul. I turned 4 a month before the Seoul 1988 Olympics. And it is true and sincere to say that I remember Duncan Armstrong's swim. And I remember Debbie Flintoff King, subsequently, her win in the 400 hurdles. I remember that. I remember the opening ceremony. I remember Ben Johnson. I remember the Carl Lewis run, halftime of the 88 grand final. Yeah, I'm a bit of a freak with this stuff. I know my memory is more advanced than others, neurodivergent brain and all the rest of it. But Winnie sat next to me and she was emotionally involved. Like, it was amazing to watch. When Nina Kennedy won the pole vault, Winnie was going fucking nuts, wanting to sing the national anthem when they were winning events in the pool, wanting to watch the end of the women's marathon with me when Sifa Hassan won that. She was captivated by that with me as well. So even the Raygun stuff, where I gave her a look at that, you know, dancing around in the Australian early 2000s one-day uniform. She was.
It was the uniform was the most curious bit of the whole thing.
Is that what she? But I reckon there's a decent chance Winnie's going to remember it. Like, how cool is that? You know, that she'll remember being in Menorca with her dad, who was saying, just what, you know, Rach, just shut up for a sec. Australia might win a gold medal here. Winnie's got to stay up for 10 minutes more. Like, that might cut through. That might just cut through. And thanks to no small part NordVPN. Otherwise, I would have been watching it in a different language, and that would have been fine. But I don't speak Spanish like you, Jeff. No. I only have English, so I only have that club in the bag. So NordVPN, I used their generous discount. I had to reload my account halfway through, and I do have 30 days to cancel it if I wish, because I've accessed the nordvpn.com/TFW deal. So get that for yourself, get that for your family, get that for your summer holiday. It never dropped out, no matter where I was throughout the course of a fortnight, which is pretty cool.
You won't be surprised to learn that as a born contrarian, I'm very much Team Raygun. I don't mind pile-ons when people are actually bad people doing bad things. I don't like them when people are inherently doing something with, you know, whether it was somewhat a parody or whether it was completely sincere or whatever it is, it was still somebody doing something creative to a point, and it just amazed me how angry so many people got, particularly Australian, sort of conservative Australian commentators who were going, oh, this is embarrassing and blah blah blah. Like, what the fuck would you know? What do you know about dance? What are your credentials to have any view on this whatsoever, and to say, well, that's not up to the standard of international breakdancing? Like, where are you coming from with that? Where are you going to write your column in the paper about that? It's extraordinary how, and I think it tells you a lot, how angry some people get about anything to do with creativity or the arts. Like, why is it that out of an entire competition where nobody paid any attention to a single one of the other competitors, that the single competitor who did something different is the one that has to be raged at? I should have just done everything like everybody else. Well, okay, well, what's the point of that? So, you know, I felt for her. She's somebody who wouldn't have expected to have any attention at all, really, and suddenly was just getting pilloried worldwide for days and days. And, you know, some of the meme stuff is funny and good-natured, but I loved seeing that clip of her being chaired into the Australian sort of end of Olympics party, carried in on someone's shoulders and cheered in by the rest of the team, and you know, with a smile on her face, because unless she put her phone in the microwave 5 days ago, it would have been a rough week.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that, actually. You know, I really like what Anna Mears had to say. I'm not sure if there's another sport in a country where one person has dominated it to such an extent that they've wrote the history of it, wrote a PhD on it, became a competitor in it, started up the national federation of it, been the inaugural Olympian in it. And yeah, it was funny. And do I think breakdancing should be in the Olympics? No. Do I think that there is a bigger story to be told here about how the fuck it ended up in the Olympics? I absolutely do. But yeah,
it's an exhibition event, though. It's okay. Like it pops in for one thing. It was only ever supposed to be that. It's not there permanently.
Yeah, no, it's not, because they've decided to pull it from LA, and that's partly where cricket's got some space to get into, and I'll get into that in a sec. But I never really thought that the rationale for bringing in breakdancing met the sniff test. We just want to get more people into the Olympics. Therefore, we're going to do. We're going to bring in a new. That never really tallied for me. I mean, breakdancing. I'm not saying I'm part of the culture in the slightest. I mean, maybe bring in the Melbourne Shuffle next time. Maybe I've got more of an interest in that. But, you know, breakdancing, yeah, sure. I understand how it's part of youth culture in a culture that you and I haven't necessarily
I don't think it is anymore.
Part of. I think well, my best exposure to breakdancing was when, I guess his former Senator Dastiari used to breakdance all the time when we were out on the piss, and he was very fucking good at it, Dastiari. Like, he should have been our contestant. He would have brought great brought great pride to the Olympic movement.
There's one thing to make those usual suspects more angry than old Raygun. It would have been.
Yeah, well, anyway, if Dasher does want to do it in 4 years' time, he can't, because it's out of LA. But yeah, like, look, there was so much good stuff, Jeff, in the Olympics across the board, and I agree that so much energy was drained into bagging her when it should have been a point of, yeah, you can laugh at it. Of course you can fucking laugh at it. She's wearing the one-day top from 2008. That's funny. That's funny. The cap as well. The Australian women's cricket team have got involved, inviting her to be part of their squad. I don't know if you've seen this on Instagram, but they've said, you've got the kit, you're in.
Yep.
So I thought that was all in great spirit. And and the other point that's being made, that's a fair one, she's going to be a very marketable person now, Raygun. She's going to make a shitload of money, and good luck to her. If the trade-off for 4 or 5 days of being in the social media sewer is that she can set herself up financially for years to come, and maybe give her, I wouldn't say sport, her whatever we're calling breakdancing, a chance to reach more people, well, you know, I guess it'll be mission accomplished. Just on the cricket bit of this, Jeff, I don't know, have you been engaging much? And I've been thinking about how we'll be there, right? Like, you and I will be there working on the Olympics next time on the cricket in one way or another, I'm certain, because we're both into the Olympics. And Matt Roller had a really interesting story on Cricinfo a couple of days ago that Team GB will be a united England-Scotland team. I mean, obviously, but just seeing that written down makes you think about the opportunities, you know, Wales and Northern Ireland as well. That's pretty cool on paper. But I just want to remind people of what this is and what this isn't, because I've seen some stupid's the wrong word. I've seen some ridiculous reporting about this around the 100 again, around T10 cricket again. That's not possible. The only way you can be eligible to be the format in an Olympic sport is if there's an existing world championship. It is going to be T20. We already know it's going to be 6 teams. It's a gently catchy monkey situation. They want to just like get it in there. It's going to be a 4-day event. There'll be 2 groups of 3, as I understand it. They'll play semi-finals on day 3 and medal events on day 4. They'll repeat it for the other sex the next 4 days. And if it works in LA, then we're flying for Brisbane and onwards and all the rest of it. So let's not, you know, the fact that National Olympic Committee funding will flow through to other parts of the world is terrific, but those parts of the world, in all probability, won't be represented in the Olympics in the first instance. However, with all of those caveats, Jeff, thinking about this last night, wouldn't it be brilliant if we had a proper Olympic qualifier tournament ahead of this? Because USA will be the first team that gets in by virtue of being the host. 5 teams to qualify. Let's say 2 of them get through on rankings or on World Cup performances or something like that. So for the sake of this sequence or cycle...
2026 T20 World Cup.
You've got it. So maybe the 2 finalists from that get the automatic qualifier spots. Imagine if we had an Olympic qualifier, you know, that was picking 2 or 3 teams or something like that to go through to the Olympics. It'd be huge. It'd be emotional. There'd be so much on it. We'd all be there. It'd be like one of those World Cup qualifiers with lots of associate nations playing, except you might see, I don't know, Pakistan playing Australia for their chance to be in the Olympic Games in a one-off T20 match. That would be awesome. Talk about jeopardy and sudden death and that kind of thing. It would make the Olympics experience actually go back to a whole other competition. It would give, it would mean more about what happens in the next World Cup. So I don't know how far advanced the thinking is on this, but I like to think we can make this into a much bigger thing than like 4 days at LA, then forget about it again.
Yeah, but we should be lobbying for France to be there as defending silver medalists as well. So that leaves 4 spots, which would make it even more interesting. Get the US in there, get France in there, the battle of the Statue of Liberty between those two, and then fill in the rest from there. Yeah, I think six is too skinny. Hopefully they can find a way to Brisbane to at least get it to 8 and take a couple more days to do it. They do have sports that last for almost the entire duration. Fuck me, how long does volleyball go for? Jesus Christ. Trying to do the Guardian live blogs, and I'd be like, all right, there's a volleyball game happening. I'll keep checking in with that, but I've got to do some stuff at the athletics track, and there are some heats there, and then there's something with the canoe cross and blah, blah, blah. 2.5 hours later, I'll be like, oh, shit, I should update that volleyball game. It's only the second set. Not only are they still going, they're not even halfway through. They'd be lasting an entire shift. It'd be Brazil-Croatia in the round of 16 volleyball, and it's like Test cricket. How the hell do you stay engaged? So they're out on the court for the entire time. So look, volleyball just went for the entire Olympics. I'm pretty sure almost the last event was volleyball. They had the women's gold medal game and the basketball, but there was a volleyball game going on that last afternoon that, again, just went on and on. So if volleyball can last for the entire duration of the games, then surely we can get a couple more cricket matches in there.
Yeah, it's a good point. Volleyball is usually the last event of an Olympics. That's pretty common. It was the men's volleyball at London in 2012. I reckon we finished. I was at Earls Court working on it. I think we finished at about 5 o'clock, and they rushed over to the closing ceremony at the stadium afterwards. So you're right. There are team sports that go the whole way through, but I know why they're doing it. They just want to make sure the first one goes smoothly and keep it small and keep it contained and make sure the quality is of the highest possible standard. All these other things, just for one go. And you're right, get to Brisbane, better cricket infrastructure, maybe a second ground, and that I think is an opportunity. And look, we know that India are keen on hosting the Olympic Games in 2036. I'm not sure whether that'll come to pass, but there has been some chat about Mumbai being the Olympic host in 2 cycles' time, or 3 cycles' time, sorry. So
Saudi Arabia won it, though, so they pretty much ink that in. What they want, they get.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fair point, but yeah, still, the cricket will be in there for the next 2 Olympics, feel certain, and that'll mean we will be part of it, hopefully in some way as well. On the final word, Jeff, we've been on Media Street big time over the last few days. We've I don't know if setting the news agenda is too strong a phrase, but we had the Adam Zampa interview where he spoke in a forthright manner about some of the pelters that they were copping at the World Cup last year after losing the first couple of games. There was a whole thread there about his test selection, which got newspaper coverage as well. Jimmy Anderson talking about wanting to go on the T20 domestic franchise circuit, which made the back page of The Guardian yesterday and a bunch of other reporting around the world. And then we ended up in the leading the rear window column in the Financial Review, which is in tomorrow's paper, but it's already online at the moment, about the Sydney SCG riot of 1879. That's a sentence I didn't think I'd be saying, but
finally it's back in the news. It was big enough news to bump Ned Kelly off the front pages when it happened in 1879. So, and finally it's back where it belongs, in the paper.
We got described as exceedingly cerebral, the podcast, in like the second paragraph, in reference
I've always
to
said that.
Why would we be doing a
17 Wally Hammond dick jokes per episode, but we're exceedingly cerebral.
Yeah, I like the contradiction there, but also it was mostly a story about our friends and partners, Cbus and other bits and bobs. You can find it if you want. But yes, they led the whole story with the colour and movement of the skit we did on stage last year, which was quite funny. But yeah, the Jimmy story, Jeff, I'm interested in your perspective on this. I was asked about it on radio last night. And I'm like, good on him. I love this stuff where he's just kind of like, I don't want to stop being a bowler. Yeah, I accept the fact that my England career is over. That's cool. Yeah. I'm at peace with that. I'm on with my life and whatever. But, I may not be working this winter, so I wouldn't mind doing something else and quite like bowling some more. So, it's that Lionel Hutz, does this sound like a man who's had all he can eat kind of energy there. And may he end up in the Big Bash. And look, this is an interesting debating point. To what extent is Jimmy Anderson's marketability actually quite good for the Big Bash regardless of how much of a role he might play on the field. I don't know where that intersection lies, but it's an interesting one.
Marketability's there, and potentially just interest is there in part because there would be segments in Australian media who would love for him to go poorly. It'd be a good story if he came over and got towed up. It would also be a good story if he came over and did well. You've got the whole Anderson coming to Australia on losing Ashes to a narrative. You've got the 2010-11 dominant performance where people sort of try to make that an anomaly based on the fact that the next couple of times he ran into Steve Smith in God mode and didn't take a lot of wickets. So there'd be interest in however it went, I think, and there's that advantage that the Big Bash has trouble getting people to sign on for the duration because it goes for longer than other tournaments, whereas he would be the sort of player who would take that opportunity, presumably, and would relish having a longer time to settle into his work and put together a bigger body of work to show what he could do in that tournament and then use that as the shop window for something else. I understand the perspective of people who are disappointed by it, saying it's sort of a waste to see him doing that when he probably should still be doing it for England. And who knows, you have rashes of injuries that go through fast bowling stocks, and I don't think it's completely beyond the realms that, if a bunch of bowlers went down, that they might go back to him tail between their legs and say, can you help out here or there if need be. But it was interesting how clear it was from your conversation with him that the way it was spun, that he was happy to go at Lords and he chose that, isn't really true. He wasn't. He accepted that was the only opportunity he was going to have. That seemed to be much more what he was saying by the way that I interpreted it. Yeah,
you're right. He did say that, didn't he? And where I found that fascinating is that he said a different thing at the time. Not explicitly.
Yeah, he was probably trying to be a team guy,
Yeah, and now he's able to. Well, I suppose he's still in the team, isn't he? He's still wearing the tracksuit, right? He's still employed by the ECB, and he's still a bowling mentor, coach, etc. So it's not completely free rein to say and do what he wants. But yeah, there is that part to it where it was explained and reported that, okay, I'm picking my jumping off point, when really he was told that was your jumping off point. I still don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, by the way. It's just interesting that the messaging and the public conversation on it is a bit more clear than it was a month ago when he played that Test match against the Windies. I think that the argument that we've had a number of times, he's still fine if you want to make it, but it's more that it's that. But almost ignoring the Test cricket things, that debate's had. It's like he so desperately wants to still be a bowler, a guy who does the bowling at the highest possible level that he can do the bowling at. I find that so commendable. Like because
he's fit enough to do it. He feels good, enough to do it. So I liked the way he said it. Why waste that opportunity to be that player if I can?
Yeah, and look, I think I was talking to a teammate of mine on social media about this yesterday, Nick Campion, who I play with at the Authors. I think Nick plays in the over 50s for Derbyshire, and he was like, he feels the same. He's an excellent club bowler still, and does a fine job when I play with him as well. And like he's a guy who's played league cricket for probably 40 years. He's not going to stop because he just loves bowling. It's the same thing. The difference being that Jimmy just happens to have taken 704 Test wickets, right? So, coming to a Burnley cricket club game near you, if you're in that league, maybe in a couple of years' time, sure. Lancashire next year, that sounds like it's on. Definitely sounds like he's interested in playing county cricket next year. And maybe he does spend the winter knocking about in the Big Bash. And, again, there's the shirt sales and the TV numbers and the wider fascination in him doing it. But, Josh Hazlewood does a great job for Australia at T20 international level, taking the new ball, bowling occasionally, 3 overs off the top, bowling a Test match length and swinging it. Well, I'd be interested to see whether Anderson can do that at one level below. I wouldn't be surprised if he could. I wouldn't be surprised if he could.
I wouldn't either if he could do it up top. What he's got to be able to do is find some other way to contribute because, maybe you can get 3 overs out of him through the power play, but that is dangerous. A lot of captains don't like returning to the same bowler for a 3rd over and bowling that 5th over of the power play is often the one where they really go hard at it if you're coming in and bowling the 1st over. So then it's a question of what he can do after that. Does he come in just after the first 6, bowl overs 1 and 3 and then come back and try to bowl sort of overs 7 and 9, something like that, with a spinner operating at the other end? Can he figure out things to do through the middle part of the innings? He was talking about having those variations and so on, but it's one thing doing it against your teammates in the nets, and another thing doing it when you've got a Andre Russell going hard at you through in the 16th over.
And if he does come to Australia, Jeff, watch for the crude segue here. We will try and get Jim to come and join us in one of our live shows, which we haven't talked about on the podcast yet, but probably should have. We're just not so good at promoting our own work sometimes. We have a national tour of live shows coming up November through January. We've never done the full live show circuit before. We've done Melbourne probably 5 or 6 times. We've done Adelaide thrice.
3.
We've done Sydney once, but we've never gone the whole hog. So we're starting in Perth at the Rosemount, which will be interesting given our history with WA. But you know what? We've got a lot of people listen to the show out there, so that'll be fun on the 21st of November. I've
always been very clear that I love Western Australia, and I love almost all of the people from there. And in a way, I even love the small fraction of absolute nutters who get angry at us for anything that they perceive to be slighting WA in some way, because it never is. But there's something enjoyable. They enjoy doing it, and we enjoy them doing it. So in the end, It doesn't hurt anybody. Basically, it's a kink, and we're not here to shame anybody for that. We're both parties are getting off on it.
We can kink shame at the Rosemount on the 21st of November, night before the first Border Gavaskar test. We will go from Perth to Melbourne, and we'll have a bit of downtime in Melbourne. We'll slot in our Melbourne show on a Friday night in town. We've never done this. We've never gone the whole hog in Melbourne. We had the Corner Hotel show last year, which was a thrill, and that was the show that got mentioned in the paper today. The Capitol Theatre holds, I think, 600 people. So that's a whole different baby. That's a whole different thing. So we're going to have to have a crack. And we've mentioned this for all the shows, but especially in Melbourne, if you want to bring your cricket team or your work Christmas do or anything like that on a Friday night in town, let us know. I think we're doing group discounts. If you've got 8 or more people, this will be the show for that kind of activity.
Yeah, there'll be, so you can email and find out about that, info@finalwordcricket.com. This is the Lord Kitchener show where I'm pointing down the camera. We need you. So if you're in Melbourne and you're interested, commit to it now, and then it won't be hard to actually show up on the day. And also that's the big Final Word weekend, because we have the live show on the Friday night, and then we play the Final Word 11 match on the Sunday. So if you're a bit out of town, it might be a good weekend to come into town, get involved with all of that, and see if we can kick it up a notch, Spice Weasel style once again.
I'm going to try and play on the Saturday as well for my old club in Dever Hills, so I'm going to try and make it a really big weekend for me. The 5th of December, 2 nights before the Adelaide Test match, I'm pretty sure, at the Rhino Room, which...
Not the Spearmint Rhino Room.
Before, not the Spearmint Rhino Room. No, just the old-fashioned Rhino Room on the 5th, on a Thursday night. It's also a Thursday night a week later at Brisbane. That might be 2 nights before the Gabba Test, I think, Thursday the 12th of December. And we finish off on night 5 of the Sydney Test last night, if it goes that far. Comedy Store, back where we had a great time with Michael Bevan last year. So all the ticket links that you need are at our Linktree. It's really easy to click through, buy yourself a ticket, buy yourself a stack of tickets. Bring your friends, bring your cricket people. If they don't know us, bring them anyway. If you've been to one of our shows before, you know that we always deliver on big guests, and we plan on doing so again. And there is a subscription discount. So if you're one of our patrons, Jeff, you can explain this. There is a code you can bung in, which we've sent to our patrons, and that gives you, and you can still access that. Once you're a new patron, we'll send it over to you.
Yeah, there's a locked post on the page that you can go and access when you sign up, and get that a token of appreciation for yourselves. The night 5 thing will be interesting if it goes like the India-Australia test did at the SCG last time, if it goes to the death on day 5, because we're supposed to be starting at about 7:30. If that happens, I realised I was wargaming this in my head yesterday. We'll just have to do the Daily Show as segment 1 of the live show on stage. We'll have to shoot it on stage and then get someone to upload it as we continue with the rest of the live show. That's the only way it'll work, because if there's a little extra half hour and, the last hour and the 15 overs have to get in, and maybe there's been a sprinkle of rain earlier in the day and whatever it is, you could play until 7:30, which means, and then presumably you'll have broadcasting commitments and who knows what, which means the Comedy Store's right next to the ground. If it went the absolute full distance, we might be rolling in to the Comedy Store at 8 p.m. and we'd have to be straight on stage and just do the Daily Show. And then get it out from there.
Yeah, I don't know. We haven't organised our Sydney guest yet, but like, let's assume it's someone we work with, like Kat or something like that. Maybe get Kat to do the 30-second summary or, some version of that. So that's all ahead of us. Buy your tickets. We're going to take our first break. It's a pretty busy show, a lot to get through after it, starting with a conversation about Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. It is the final word. It is my 40th birthday, nearly. Season 16, episode 31. Jeff, Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, school holidays, they're in full swing over here, and there's no better place to bring the kids and check off another day off the calendar as you count down to them going back to school and taking them to Westfield. Take them to the shopping centre like my parents did when I was a little boy. If you listen through the summer, you'll know you can explore the worlds of your kids' favourite TV show, CBeebies Rainbow Adventure at Westfield London. There was a CBeebies channel when we were there was barely any other English channels in Spain, but there was a CBeebies channel. That probably says a little bit about the types of people who go to Menorca, young families from the UK. And Winnie watched that when she wasn't watching the Olympics with me. But this isn't about CBeebies. It's about Little Bees. Soft play now open at Westfield London as well at Shepherd's Bush out there where we had our watch along at Sixers for the Final Word World Cup party a couple of months ago. Kids 6 and under can safely play and climb through this vibrant world of wonder and adventure. And it does sound good. And, not everyone's a soft play person. And I've learnt that soft play...
You had to explain to me what it was. So we're a little time weird thing here. We already did the story time that'll come up this weekend where you had to explain. I am not a parent, nor intending to be. Didn't know that I needed to know what soft play is, but now I do know that it's about squishy blocks and being able to fall into stuff and not hurt yourself, which is a reinvention of things that we used to already have. If you ever did gymnastics as a kid, you had the big the pit, they used to call it. So they've just redesigned it. Soft play sounds nicer than the pit. Put them in the pit. But that's what we used to do with kids. Put them in the pit and make them jump in the hole full of foam blocks so you could do backflips and stuff and not hurt yourself.
I've been watching some Instagram reels from the pit recently. There was the chap who was the co-commentator. I don't know what his name is, sadly, but he competed at Tokyo. And, of course, I wasn't in Australia for the game, so I didn't get to hear Mark Taylor do the diving. But his expert was a bloke who is a diver, and I've been looking at his quite amazing Instagram offering, which he's got so many different reels of his life and whatever else, and watching him jump into the pit. By the way, don't tell me for a second that young Jeff Lemon did gymnastics. I'm not sure if I believe that. Were you a gymnast as a boy?
As a very young one, yeah. I could
really?
do some sweet moves. Then I suddenly became really tall, and everything just went out the window. I didn't know where the limbs were.
Okay, that's something to leave you with, thinking about Jeff on the
Imagine me in a leotard.